Good afternoon. Welcome to BBC Bruges. I'm Matthew Robson. The subject for this afternoon is the ongoing political and military crisis in Ukraine, and specifically the 2014 and 2015 ceasefire agreements known as the Minsk Agreements. We're going to interview a number of different experts presenting differing perspectives on the current situation in Ukraine, evaluating the effectiveness of the Minsk Agreements, and assessing the need for and likelihood of achieving a third Minsk Agreement in the future. By speaking to experts from Ukraine, Russia, and the EU, we hope to gain a thorough and comprehensive understanding of the issues at stake and the prospects for the future. Later, we'll be hearing from Theo, our reporter in Russia, and Pierre, our EU Affairs reporter. First, though, we go to Florina, our reporter in Kiev, Ukraine.
Thank you, Matt. This is Florina from BBC Bruges, live from Kiev, and I'm here with Anna, specialist in EU and Ukrainian affairs. Today we're going to talk about the Minsk Agreement, and Anna is going to give us a perspective of how things are actually run on the ground, and if this agreement has been effective or not. So Anna, tell us about this agreement. What happened so far on the ground?
As we know, there are many different provisions in Minsk agreements. There are really a lot of them, but the most important ones are the ceasefire, the restoration of the control of the Ukrainian border by Ukrainian forces, also the elections in the Donetsk and Lugansk regions, and the amendments to the constitution concerning decentralization. And for now, we can say that only the provision concerning ceasefire are in force, because they literally stop until the 15th of February, which is the date when the Minsk agreements are in force. And all the other provisions are not yet enacted.
Okay, so you're saying that the second agreement now actually expired.
Yes, it expired on the 31st of December 2015.
And what is actually happening on the ground? Do you still have fire, or are they still following the agreement?
No, basically, as I said in the first question, they're only following this first provision concerning the ceasefire and also the pull-off of weapons from the security zone. Otherwise, we can say that Minsk 2 is still in force.
Okay, and would you say it is likely to have a third agreement, given that the second one has officially expired?
Indeed, there are some politicians who mention the necessity to have the Minsk 3 agreement, but taking into consideration that there is a big misunderstanding between Russia and Ukraine of how they should be implemented, how they should be interpreted, I think that Minsk 3 will be essentially the same as Minsk 2, just have a different name and different time limits.
And if you were to describe in one sentence what this agreement has done, is it effective? Is it not effective? In very, very short terms.
I would say we should look at it from the human point of view, but I can say that after Minsk 2 was signed, the rivalry has stopped, the clashes have stopped, and if before we sometimes can have up to 100 people dying in the clashes every day, now it is much less. Although it's continuously violated, the ceasefire is not actually in place constantly, but still there is much more security for people, and we preserve human lives. Otherwise, of course, it was not very efficient.
But from that perspective, it has been an improvement.
Yes, I think so, definitely.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Theodosios Kotas. I'm from BBC Bruges. We're here in Moscow, and I have with me Miss Aliona Permakova, who is a representative of a research institute here in Russia. And we're discussing today the Minsk Agreement. And I would like to know, first of all, what's the official position of the Russian government about the Minsk Agreement and in general for the Ukrainian conflict?
Well, the Russian government expresses that it has already fulfilled its side of the implementation of the agreement, that the ceasefire is holding. So now it accuses Kiev in being very slow in implementing its side of the agreement, namely decentralization, so providing the country with a federalized form of government.
So the official position of the Russian government is that the Minsk agreement was not efficient, right?
No, it was not. Yes, I would say so.
And what would be your research institute's and your personal opinion on that?
I'd say it was efficient in the sense that yes, both sides wanted to talk and actually wanted to come up to some sort of agreement. But of course, it's inefficient in the sense that it is becoming, if not already, a frozen conflict. We're going to have another territory which is not recognized. And it is, of course, inefficient in the sense that so many people have died, so many people have lost their houses, so many people had to move. And while the Kremlin is saying that the only thing that it is doing is protecting the citizens of Eastern Ukraine, in reality, of course, it's not the case. There are people who are still deprived from even simple commodities like food and water, let alone salaries and other benefits.
And do you think that there is going to be a third Minsk agreement, given that it's about to expire?
We'll see how the elections go, because right now Russia will not agree to the terms that the EU and the US put on the table, namely free and fair election, but the separatists, they do not want to see the Ukrainian parties represented, and we'll see, but I don't think so.
Thank you very much, Aliona.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We are here in the office of our European expert, Lorraine M., to discuss the Minsk agreements and their implementation in Ukraine. Thank you for having us here, Lorraine.
It's my pleasure.
To start off with the most crucial question, do you consider that the Minsk agreements have been effective so far?
Well, I think it's good to have a diplomatic outcome on the issue, yet no, I do not consider that they have been very successful. I mean, Minsk 1, as we all know, essentially collapsed, and after Minsk 2, fighting did subside generally, yet certain conflicts ensued and hundreds of casualties have been reported since.
I see. And what is the stance of the European Union in all this?
Well, for the European Union, the entry into force of the DCFTA with Ukraine is a positive step, and the path, however, to peace is complicated. I mean, Minsk 2 was extended for 2016, yet certain unresolved issues remain. One of them could be said that is Russia's continued supply of ammunition and weaponry to the rebels. Yet the EU does remain focused on and committed to a peaceful solution and strong cooperation with Ukraine. And let's not forget that the sanctions against Russia have been extended as well. All in all, I think for the EU, the foundation for a solution in the area is the proper implementation and full implementation of the Minsk agreements.
And in all this context, do you expect a Minsk 3 in the future, in the foreseeable future?
I would have to say no. There are many pressing issues currently within the EU, the Brexit, the financial issues, of course, the refugee crisis, the situation in Syria. The Dutch referendum on the association agreement of Ukraine and the EU also does not bode well for the future relationship. So no, I don't consider that the Minsk 3 is on the cards for the time being. I mean, proper implementation of the Minsk 2, which, as I mentioned earlier, has been extended for 2016, will be considered the focus of the EU's policy in the region.
I see. Thank you very much for this interesting interview, Lorraine. Pierre Orphan for BBC Bruges. Back to you, Matt.
Thank you very much to our reporters and to their interviewees. As we can see, perspective matters in one's conception of the crisis in Ukraine, with both the Russian and Ukrainian sides seeing very different factors as driving the ongoing crisis. What is clear, though, is that although the Minsk agreements may have stemmed the flow of death in the conflict, they have not yet resolved the causes of the conflict or established any kind of medium or long-term stability. In addition, there also seems to be a consensus that there is no sign of an immediate successor agreement to the Minsk agreements, and certainly no sense that a future agreement will be able to produce a more lasting resolution of the conflict. As a result, it seems the current situation of political uncertainty and an increasingly frozen conflict will endure. I hope you've enjoyed our show this evening. Until next time, I'm Matthew Robson for BBC Bruges. Goodbye.